On November 1, the year 2015, hikers navigating the rugged, high-altitude terrain of Middle Mountain Road in southwestern Colorado make a grim discovery. They find a human skull resting in a grassy patch off a remote four-wheel drive trail, roughly 1.5 miles from where other parts of the boy had already been recovered 2 years prior. Forensic anthropologists confirm the identity belongs to Dylan Redwine, a 13-year-old whose life met a brutal, permanent end. Closer examination of the cranium adds devastating physical detail to a case investigators had built for years in the shadows. Analysts identify fractures consistent with blunt force trauma and 2 small sharp force tool marks that appear to have been made close to the time he perished. This undeniable physical evidence shatters the persistent defense theory that a mountain lion or other wild animal was responsible. The discovery adds damning weight against a single suspect investigators had focused on since the year 2013, a man who had been hiding in plain sight. Before the tragedy shattered the community, 13-year-old Dylan Redwine built a life defined by quiet, teenage normalcy in Colorado Springs. He was a bright, sports-loving teenager who cherished his friends, his school routine, and the safety of his mother's home. The early 2010s in Colorado Springs provided a suburban haven of manicured lawns and predictable school days, a stark contrast to the isolated wilderness he would later be forced to visit. However, a bitter and protracted custody battle between his mother Elaine and his father Mark Redwine cast a heavy shadow over Dylan. The legal warfare stretched across multiple jurisdictions and consumed years of the family history, draining resources and eroding any semblance of stability for the children. Elaine fought to keep Dylan in a secure environment away from his father. Mark utilized the family court system to assert, control, and demand visitation rights. The 6th Judicial District handled the contentious filings, treating the volatile situation as a standard domestic dispute rather than a powder keg of familial dread. Bureaucratic protocols often prioritize parental rights over a child's psychological distress. Judge David Dickinson reviewed the case and issued a rigid court order mandating that Dylan spend the 2012 Thanksgiving holiday at his father's house. The legal system ignored the boy's explicit reluctance and vocalized discomfort, reducing his genuine fears to mere teenage rebellion. This rigid adherence to visitation schedules created a fatal systemic failure, legally forcing a vulnerable teenager into an isolated environment without any exit strategy. The catalyst for the impending disaster rooted itself in a traumatic discovery made months prior by Dylan and his older brother Corey. During a cross-country road trip, the boys gained unattended access to Mark's laptop computer. While scrolling through the digital files, they stumbled across a hidden cache of compromising and disturbing photographs. These images depicted Mark dressed in women's undergarments and consuming human waste from a diaper. The visual evidence shattered the boys' foundational perception of their father and introduced a profound, unspoken disgust into their fractured relationship. Dylan carried the psychological burden of keeping this unsettling secret locked away. This constituted an overwhelming emotional weight for a 13-year-old boy trying to navigate the complex social dynamics of junior high school. Corey confronted Mark about the photographs, leading to aggressive denials and further deteriorating the familial bond. Dylan, however, internalized the trauma, recognizing the explosive potential of the secret he held. He understood the profound shame the images represented to his father. The knowledge created an impenetrable barrier between them, transforming standard parental friction into deep-seated fear. Dylan knew confronting his father with the truth would provoke an unpredictable and dangerous reaction. Despite the escalating tension, the court mandate forced Dylan to face his fears directly. He dreaded the upcoming visit to Vallecito Reservoir, an area situated deep within the rugged La Plana Mountains. The physical geography of Mark's residence offered zero comfort and no easy avenue for escape. Vallecito Reservoir sits roughly 18 miles northeast of Durango, accessible only by winding mountain roads that cut through dense pine forests and steep, plunging valleys. The house itself stood in a secluded neighborhood swallowed by the surrounding wilderness. In this environment, the deafening hum of cicadas and the whisper of wind through the heavy timber drowned out the sounds of civilization. The closest neighbors lived far enough away to ensure complete uninterrupted isolation. The high-altitude terrain amplified the feeling of being trapped, with freezing November temperatures making foot travel across the mountains treacherous and life-threatening. Dylan knew he would be entirely alone in this remote cabin with a father he now viewed with a mixture of fear, shame, and defiance. The impending trip loomed over the teenager like a dark storm front. The court system had set the stage for an inevitable and tragic confrontation in a place where no one could hear an argument escalate. On November 18, the year 2012, Dylan reluctantly steps off a plane at the Durango-La Plata County Airport to fulfill the court-mandated holiday visitation. The physical distance between the terminal and Mark's isolated mountain home spans miles of unforgiving terrain. Establishing a geographic trap the teenager cannot escape on his own. Surveillance footage from the airport captures the tense near-silent reunion between the teenage boy and his estranged father. Mark greets his son with stiff, awkward body language. Dylan maintains physical distance, projecting an undeniable aura of discomfort and reluctance. The pair navigate the terminal and exit into the freezing Colorado evening, loading Dylan's luggage into Mark's vehicle. Their subsequent stop at a Durango Walmart offers a final, chilling public glimpse of the boy. Security cameras record the two walking down the harsh fluorescent-lit aisles, picking up a few items without engaging in any meaningful conversation. The stark visual record highlights the complete breakdown of their relationship. The footage shows two people who appear more like hostile strangers than family members sharing a holiday. Dylan utilizes his cellular phone during these moments, texting his friends back in Colorado Springs and trying to maintain a tether to the outside world. He already formulated an escape plan, arranging by text message to visit a friend's house in nearby Bayfield at 6:30 the following morning. The drive from Durango up into the mountains of Vallecito Reservoir plunges the vehicle into rural darkness. The heavy pine trees block out the moonlight, leaving the sodium streetlights of the city far behind. Upon arriving at the secluded house, the isolation becomes absolute. The heavy metallic click of the front door lock seals the teenager inside the cabin with the man he fears. Dylan seeks refuge on the living room couch, retreating into the digital sanctuary of his cellular phone. At 9:37 at night, Dylan sends his final text message to a friend, finalizing the plans for his early morning departure. By roughly 9:46 at night, the digital footprint of the 13-year-old ceases entirely. His phone goes dark, disconnecting from the cellular network and plunging his side of the conversation into a permanent void. This abrupt cessation of communication stands out as a glaring anomaly for a highly social teenager who lived through his device. The timeline of the device shutting down provides investigators with a chilling, precise window into the start of the tragedy. Inside the walls of the Vallecito home, a fatal confrontation ignites. The dark woods outside offer no witnesses to the events unfolding in the living room. The following morning, November 19, the friend texts Dylan at 6:46 in the morning asking for his whereabouts. The message receives only silence. This sudden lack of communication prompts immediate concern from his social circle, who know Dylan never ignores his messages. Later that day, Mark Redwine initiates a deceptive narrative he will cling to for years. He claims he left the house around 7:30 in the morning to run errands in Durango. He states Dylan remained asleep on the living room couch. Mark asserts he returned around 11:30 in the morning to find the boy gone, leaving behind his cellular phone charger and vital belongings. Mark contacts Elaine, offering a dismissive tone regarding their son's absence. He attempts to frame the disappearance as typical teenage misbehavior, suggesting Dylan simply wandered off down the mountain. Elaine senses an immediate visceral wrongness in the story, knowing her son would never vanish into the freezing wilderness without his charger or money. By 5:30 in the evening, a frantic Elaine bypasses Mark's apathy and files an official missing person report with the La Plata County Sheriff Department. The formal filing triggers an immediate law enforcement response. A desperate search and rescue operation launches into the freezing Colorado wilderness as the critical first 48 hours begin to tick away. On the evening of November 19, 2012, the La Plata County Sheriff Department initiates a massive search operation across the Vallecito Reservoir Basin. The physical geography of the region creates an immediate obstacle for law enforcement and civilian volunteers. The reservoir sits at an elevation of 8,000 feet, surrounded by dense pine canopies and steep ravines. Freezing temperatures grip the mountain, dropping below freezing and crystallizing the forest floor. Search teams deploy tracking dogs and aerial helicopters to scan the treacherous terrain, hoping to locate a heat signature or a scent trail. The initial efforts yield zero physical evidence, forcing investigators to rely on Mark Redwine and his unverified timeline of events. Detectives drive down into Durango to canvass the local businesses, attempting to corroborate Mark's claim of running morning errands. They pull security camera footage and interview store clerks, searching for any visual confirmation of his stated whereabouts. The lack of a clear departure point outside the isolated cabin leaves the search grids wide and unfocused. Mark controls the narrative, pushing the theory that his son walked out the front door and vanished into the wilderness. Between December 2012 and February 2013, heavy winter storms bury the La Plata Mountains in feet of snow. The deep accumulation forces search and rescue commanders to suspend high-altitude ground operations. Investigators pivot their focus from the physical wilderness to interrogations and digital forensics. Law enforcement brings in profilers from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to analyze the family dynamics and Mark's behavioral patterns. In February 2013, the fractured family dynamic broadcasts to a national television audience. Mark and Elaine appear on the Dr. Phil television program to discuss the disappearance. The appearance offers detectives a public unedited look at the primary suspect under pressure. Mark displays closed, evasive body language and deflects direct questions regarding his actions on the morning of November 19. He refuses to submit to a polygraph examination, citing distrust of the testing apparatus. He attempts to shift public suspicion onto Elaine and introduces vague theories of strangers abducting the teenager. Investigators observe these deflections, adding the televised statements to a growing psychological profile of a man hiding a dark reality. The onset of summer thaws the frozen landscape, allowing search teams to resume their grueling work in the higher elevations. On June 27, 2013, a specialized search team navigates Middle Mountain Road. This unpaved logging route sits 8.6 miles from Mark's front door. The physical path features a steep incline, requiring a specialized all-terrain vehicle to ascend the rough grade. Deep in the brush along this route, searchers locate the first physical remnants of the missing teenager. They catalog a torn shirt, one single shoe, and a sock scattered across the uneven ground. The geographic reality of this location dismantles Mark's runaway narrative. A 13-year-old boy in standard street clothing would not hike 8.6 miles up an impassable mountain trail in freezing November weather. The location implicates an individual possessing specialized transport and intimate knowledge of the local logging routes. Mark owned a specific all-terrain vehicle capable of climbing the steep grade. He drove the trails of Middle Mountain Road on numerous occasions for recreation. This grim discovery forces the La Plata County Sheriff Department to pivot their efforts from a missing person inquiry to a criminal investigation. On the exact day, searchers locate the clothing items. Dylan's half-brother Brandon receives a disturbing telephone call from Mark. Mark steers the conversation toward the discovery on the mountain. With no external prompt, Mark introduces the specific phrase, blunt, force trauma into the dialogue. He tells Brandon that investigators will need to locate the boy's skull to determine the actual cause of his demise. This bizarre, specific detail alerts detectives, as law enforcement had not released any information regarding the condition of the recovered items. Armed with this new psychological red flag, investigators secure a comprehensive search warrant for the Vallecito cabin in August 2013. They deploy trained human rains detection canines to process the interior of the home. The specialized dogs work through the floor plan, seeking volatile organic compounds associated with human decomposition. The canes give a positive alert in the living room, targeting the carpeted area in front of the couch. The dogs then move to the laundry room and alert on the washing machine. In their last sweep, the canines alert on the exact clothing Mark reported wearing on the night his son vanished. Throughout the year 2014, crime scene pepechnicians conduct exhaustive chemical analyses inside the isolated cabin. Investigators pull up the living room carpet and apply luminescence chemicals to the underlying padding. The testing reveals bright chemical reactions indicative of a deliberate and thorough cleanup effort. Forensic scientists isolate trace amounts of Dylan's blood soaked into the living room floorboards. This physical biological evidence contradicts Mark's claim that the teenager left the residence unharmed. Despite the canine alerts and the genetic profile, investigators face a massive legal hurdle. The La Placa County District Attorney refuses to sign an arrest warrant, citing the rigid protocols of circumstantial law. The prosecutor demands a watertight case, fearing a premature trial could result in an acquittal. The defense introduces the theory of a wild animal attack, creating a layer of reasonable doubt. Without the skull to prove human-inflicted trauma, medical examiners cannot issue a definitive cause of death. The judicial system forces the detectives into a grueling holding pattern, demanding more concrete proof. Entering the year 2015, detectives refuse to let the investigation stagnate in the filing cabinets. They spend the winter months dismantling every alternative theory presented by the defense. Investigators consult with wildlife experts and game wardens to map mountain lion behavioral patterns. The experts confirm that wild predators do not remove clothing or scatter individual garments over wide, specific distances. Detectives subpoena the digital logs of Mark's cellular telephone, tracing his exact network pings on the morning of November 19. The digital data exposes fatal inconsistencies in his stated errand timeline, proving he was not at his stated locations. Law enforcement officers conduct another round of interviews with the residents living near the Vallecito cabin. Neighbors confirm that no unfamiliar vehicles or strangers entered the dead-end street during the critical window of time. Detectives map the blind spots of the neighborhood, proving a kidnapping by an unknown third party presented a physical impossibility. By ruling out every external variable, the investigative net tightens around the father. The detectives build an airtight circumstantial timeline, waiting for the final piece of the physical puzzle to surface on the mountain. The missing link in the forensic chain materializes on November 1, 2015. Hikers navigating the treacherous, high-altitude terrain of Middle Mountain Road step off the established four-wheel drive trail to explore a grassy patch of wilderness. The elevation at this specific location exceeds 9,000 feet, characterized by sheer drops, freezing winds, and thick vegetation. The physical geography of this location places the site an estimated 1.5 miles from the exact spot where search teams recovered the initial clothing items 2 years prior. Amidst the dense brush, the hikers locate a human cranium resting on the uneven earth. The citizens secure the perimeter and contact the La Plana County Sheriff Department. Deputies arrive on the scene, establish a formal crime scene grid, and transport the critical evidence to the laboratory for extensive analysis. Dental records extracted from pediatric files confirm the identity belongs to 13-year-old Dylan. Laboratory technicians examine the bone structure under high magnification, searching for microscopic anomalies. The physical evidence reveals decisive fractures consistent with severe blunt force trauma. In addition, analysts document 2 small, sharp force tool marks near the injury site. The scientific timeline proves these tool marks occurred close to the time the boy perished. This undeniable physical reality shatters the persistent defense theory blaming a wild animal attack. The sheer mechanics of the injuries indicate human intervention and a deliberate, fatal strike, armed with the undeniable proof of human-inflicted trauma. The La Plata County Sheriff Department builds a comprehensive grand jury presentation. The culmination of meticulous evidence gathering arrives on July 22, 2017. The grand jury reviews the forensic reports, the trace blood evidence, and the digital communication logs over several closed-door sessions. Upon reviewing the totality of the circumstances, the jury hands down an indictment. A district judge reviews the presentation and issues a warrant with a $1 million cash-only bond attached. Law enforcement officers track Mark Redwine to Bellingham, Washington, a coastal city situated thousands of miles from the Colorado mountains. Interstate apprehension teams surround his location and secure him in steel handcuffs. The extradition process initiates, requiring extensive interstate paperwork to transport the suspect back to the jurisdiction he attempted to escape. Prosecutors lay out the terrifying chronological reality of November 18, 2012 inside the public arrest affidavit. They piece together the psychological puzzle defining the fatal altercation inside the Velocito cabin. The court documents reveal the underlying catalyst for the tragedy centered on the volatile secret the boy carried. The narrative shifts from a missing person inquiry to a methodical reconstruction of a domestic nightmare. Authorities prepare to expose the horrific events that transpired when the heavy front door locked the teenager inside the living room. The prosecution maps the spatial reality of the living room where the fatal events unfolded. The confined space of the small mountain cabin offered 0 avenues for escape as the confrontation ignited between father and son. Dylan confronted his father regarding the disturbing photographs discovered on the laptop computer during the prior summer. The 13-year-old vocalized his disgust concerning the images depicting the man wearing women's undergarments and consuming human waste from a diaper. This exposure of an agonizing, shameful secret shattered Mark's facade of parental authority and triggered an explosive reaction. Consumed by rage and desperate to silence the threat to his reputation, Mark delivered a fatal strike to his son. The trace amounts of blood embedded in the living room floorboards anchored this exact location as the focal point of the violence. The man entrusted by the court to provide a safe harbor transformed into an unrelenting predator in a matter of seconds. Following the lethal blow, the father dragged the boy across the carpet to conceal the evidence from immediate view. The heavy pine trees surrounding the property absorbed any sounds of the struggle, ensuring complete silence across the mountain ridge. The geographic isolation of the dead-end street allowed the perpetrator ample time to execute the next phase of his plan without external interruption. The house remained dark and quiet while Mark formulated a strategy to dispose of the physical proof and fabricate an alibi. In the freezing hours before dawn, Mark loaded the boy into his vehicle to begin a treacherous journey up the mountain. He navigated the steep, unpaved incline of Middle Mountain Road under the cover of rural darkness. The vehicle headlights cut through the dense timber as he ascended the rugged logging route, putting 8.6 miles between the crime scene and the desolate drop zone. Mark utilized his intimate knowledge of the local terrain to select a dumping site inaccessible to standard civilian vehicles and casual hikers. He discarded the victim in the dense brush, attempting to let the unforgiving mountain elements erase his actions. Investigators detail how the perpetrator returned to this exact dumping ground during the subsequent weeks to scatter the remains across a wider radius. This deliberate staging aimed to create a false visual narrative of a tragic animal encounter. The calculated distribution of the clothing and the subsequent telephone calls to family members mentioning blunt, forced trauma highlighted a supreme arrogance. Mark believed he could manipulate the geographic vastness of the La Plana Mountains to outsmart the judicial system. The physical evidence left on the cranium proved his staging efforts paled under the scrutiny of modern forensic science. The reconstructed timeline strips away the lies, revealing a man who chose self-preservation over the life of his own child. This staggering betrayal sets the stage for a monumental legal battle in the Colorado courts. The pursuit of justice faces unprecedented logistical and legal hurdles following the extradition. Mark Redwine utilizes every available legal loophole to delay the commencement of the trial. The defense team files numerous motions for a change of venue, attempting to move the proceedings away from the La Plata County jurisdiction. The presiding judge denies these motions, forcing the defense to seek alternative stalling tactics. The legal system stalls again when the public defender representing Mark incurs an unrelated criminal arrest. This bizarre development forces the court to assign new legal counsel, requiring months of additional preparation time. The global health crisis of 20,020 shutters courthouses across the nation. The physical courtroom stands empty while pandemic protocols freeze the judicial calendar for another entire year. Elaine and Corey endure an agonizing waiting game, watching bureaucratic protocols clash with their need for closure. The rigid nature of the court system prioritizes the rights of the accused, leaving the family of the victim to languish in uncertainty. The trial commences in June 2021, 4 years post-arrest and almost a decade after the initial tragedy. The lengthy delay serves as a stark reminder of the infuriating systemic failures inherent in the modern judicial process. Inside the La Plana County Courthouse, the prosecution builds a formidable chronological case against the unrepentant father. The state presents a massive collection of physical evidence to the selected jury members. Expert witnesses take the stand to explain the forensic significance of the human cranium recovered from Middle Mountain Road. Anthropologists detail the sharp tool marks linking the specific grooves to human intervention rather than animal teeth. Digital forensic analysts present the cellular communication logs, projecting the timeline onto the courtroom screens. The charts demonstrate the exact moment the boy's cellular telephone ceased transmitting data on November 18, 2012. Crime scene technicians describe the chemical luminescence tests utilized to extract trace blood evidence from the Velocito living room. The prosecution forces the courtroom to confront the psychological motive driving the devastating crime. Jurors examine the disturbing photographs depicting Mark consuming human waste from a diaper while wearing women's undergarments. These images establish the profound shame and explosive rage required to strike down a family member. The visual presentation anchors the motive in a desperate need for absolute secrecy. The state paints a vivid picture of a man willing to sacrifice his son to protect his own perverse reputation. The defense attempts to mount a counter-narrative to combat the overwhelming mountain of circumstantial evidence. Defense attorneys rely on the exhausted theory of a mountain lion encounter on the wilderness trails. They suggest a random stranger infiltrated the dead-end mountain street to abduct the teenager during the morning hours. The jury evaluates the physical geography and the forensic impossibilities inherent in these claims. Wildlife experts testify that natural predators do not scatter individual articles of clothing miles apart. Neighborhood canvas reports confirm the absolute absence of unfamiliar vehicles on the isolated road during the critical timeline. The prosecution dismantles the alternative theories, exposing the defense arguments as baseless fabrications. Following closing arguments, the judge issues the final instructions to the jury panel. The jurors retreat to the deliberation room to weigh the evidence and determine the fate of the accused. The deliberation process moves with unexpected speed, reflecting the sheer strength of the chronological evidence. On July 16, 2021, the jury reaches a consensus after less than a single day of discussion. The courtroom falls silent as the bailiff hands the final paperwork to the presiding judge. The foreperson stands and delivers a definitive conclusion to the years of uncertainty and legal posturing. The jury finds Mark Redwine guilty of second-degree charges and child abuse resulting in the loss of life. The definitive legal victory brings a massive wave of relief to the prosecution table and the surviving family members. The culmination of the legal process arrives on October 8, 2021, during the official sentencing hearing. Chief District Judge Jeffrey R. Wilson presides over the courtroom, preparing to issue the final mandate. The judge addresses the unrepentant father, noting his absolute lack of remorse and his continuous reliance on deceptive narratives. The court highlights the horrific breach of trust committed by a parent mandated by the judicial system to protect a vulnerable teenager. Judge Wilson sentences the perpetrator to the maximum penalty of 48 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections. The heavy gavel strikes the sound block, sealing the fate of a man who thought he could hide his actions in the vast wilderness. Law enforcement officers escort the convicted individual out of the courtroom to begin his mandatory incarceration. The definitive court verdict delivers a crucial measure of justice to Elaine, Corey, and a community marked by the tragedy. The legacy of the 13-year-old boy remains honored by the relentless detective work that refused to let his story fade into the shadows.